Hey everyone, it's Inigo here and welcome to my channel. I wanted to make a video today as a kind of follow-up from the video that I made last week. So I made a video last week on Minulla on, which almost directly translates to I have in the English language. The reason why I wanted to make that video, it might seem very simple and it's something that you will probably learn quite early on when you learn Finnish. One of the first things you'll learn when you learn Finnish is how to say I have. The reason I made that video is basically to point out that the usage of Minulla on and I have are different. So in the English language, like to have, you're using a verb, but Minulla on, there's not a verb in Minulla, and the on is just is. So you're basically just describing something. There's not really a process that's taking place when you say Minulla on, you're just describing something. So that's like a really key difference between Minulla on and I have. And if you get far enough in learning the Finnish language, you'll probably learn that when you put an object in a sentence, you also have to think about what form that object's going to be in. And in Finnish, there's probably a bit more detail when you explain kind of what the object is and use different forms with the object. There's a bit more detail. In English, so last week I used the idea of a book as the object. So in English you could say I have a book, or I have some books, or multiple books, or all of the books. But it's always going to be book or books. In Finnish you have kirja, you have kirjaa, you have kirjoja, you have kirjat, you have kirjan. You have multiple different ways to conjugate the object, but in English there's very few. And therefore you have to understand like what form is the object going to be in when you use Minulla on. In Finnish, you'll typically learn this idea of a process. So if you're doing a process, the object is typically in the partitiivi or partitive form. And so it's quite easy and simple, but it also creates confusion in this example. So it took me a little while to learn, and it's something that actually, from my experience, you don't get taught. So if you are thinking about Minulla on as a process, so I have is a process, you'll probably put the object in the partitiivi form if it's a single object. So you might say Minulla on kirja in Finnish, that's the right way to say it. But in your head, you might think it's Minulla on kirjaa, which is in the partitiivi muodo. So if you've gotten far enough in Finnish, you'll probably understand this confusion. If you're not far enough, well, it might not make too much sense to you right now. But I had a lesson, it was like an A2.1 to A2.2 lesson last week, and still there are people that are having this confusion, and I had this confusion for quite a long time because I never learned this. So last week I kind of explained where Minulla on comes from and how to create Minulla, which is basically the mina or I word in the adesiivi form or muodo. And that adesiivi muodo is used to signify on or by or with. So Minulla on more directly translates to on or by or with me, on or by or with me, Minulla on is, so Minulla on with me, in this example, with me is, and then you give the object. And if you're describing just what's happening, you wouldn't use the partitiivi muodo because there's no process, there's no action taking place. You're just describing Minulla on something. So last week I gave some exceptions to the rule. So typically you'll say Minulla on kirja. I gave a few examples where it might not be the case. And actually, probably on the same day or the next day, I was thinking about the video I made and I realized there were two more exceptions that I forgot to mention. So I'll mention those in this video. And also, I'll give a little bit more context or more examples of how you could use Minulla on, because as it's not the same as a verb like I have in the English language, you can use it a little bit more freely, let's say, than you can in the English language. And I'll give some examples of that as well. So last week I used kirja as our object. So I will read some of those examples that I gave last week and I'll add a few more exceptions. So the main point of my idea was that if you're going to say Minulla on, the object is basically always going to be in the nominative or just like the basic form. So in this example, kirja is the book. You would usually just say kirja. There are a few exceptions to this. So if there's multiple books, for example, there are a few different ways, and I actually forgot one because I was only just translating from the English language. But in Finnish, you can also have exceptions if it's a negative sentence. So if there's a negative sentence, there will also be an exception with the object, which isn't the case in English, and hence why I forgot. So anyway, I'll go over the examples. So Minulla on kirja is probably the most common sentence that you will use. Kirja is in the basic nominative form. Next, you could say Minulla on kirjoja, Minulla on kirjoja, which kirjoja is in the moniko I or moniko partitiivi muodo. And essentially that's used to signify like multiple of an object, but not how many. You've not said how many, just multiple, more than one. And those will be whole objects as well. So in this example, books are usually whole, but there's a little bit of a distinction. So if you say kirjoja, moniko I, you're always going to be signifying like whole objects. It can't be part of objects because then it will probably be in the partitiivi muodo. Third example, you could say Minulla on kaksi kirjaa. Kirja is in the partitiivi muodo. Maybe I haven't emphasized that last A, but I'm adding another A onto kirja because I said kaksi, which means two. So Minulla on kaksi kirjaa means I have, or on me or with me is two books. And you put the kirja in this example into the partitiivi muodo because you used kaksi, which is a number. So typically after a number, you will put the object, which is book, into the partitiivi muodo. Now, those are the examples that I gave last week, and I was quite sure at the time that those were the only exceptions, but of course I forgot some. So another example you could use is Minulla on kirjat, Minulla on kirjat. So kirjat is in the moniko te form or muodo, and the moniko te muodo is used basically to talk about all of certain objects in a given context. So kirjat, maybe you might tell someone about a series of books, and then the context is there that you're talking about a series. Obviously it's not one book, but you could say Minulla on kirjat. Maybe you're talking about that series, or maybe there's like 5 books that you told someone, your friend, that you're going to go and sell at the market, and you could say Minulla on kirjat, and then now I'm going to leave and go and meet you at the market. Maybe that would be an example of how you could use kirjat in that example, moniko te. But essentially it's like all of the objects, all of the given objects in a particular context, all of them, okay? And then finally, you could say another example, Minulla ei ole kirjaa, Minulla ei ole kirjaa. So in this example, I'm saying on me, with me, or by me is not a book. And the book is in the partitiivi muodo because it's a negative sentence, and typically again with a negative sentence, the object is going to be in the partitiivi muodo. So these are the exceptions. There's a few different exceptions, but more or less when I'm using the Finnish language and when people are using the Finnish language, you're typically just going to say the basic form of the object. So Minulla on kirjaa, more or less that's going to be that's going to be the most common form and the most common usage of this adhesiivi muodo with mina, which creates Minulla. So hopefully that sort of like helps you understand how Minulla on is different to I have in the English language, in the sense that it's not actually a verb and there's no process, there's no kind of usage. You're just describing like on me or with me is a book. And to give some more examples, I kind of had this idea of maybe on the road are cars. So tie is a road, tiellä on auto, tiellä on auto. So tiellä on auto, that means on the road is a car, tiellä on auto. You could then say tiellä on autoja, tiellä on autoja. So similar to kirjoja, autoja. Autoja would mean multiple cars on the road. I'm not saying how many, there's just multiple cars, and probably that will be the most common example, maybe auto, autoja. Then you could say tiellä, so tie goes to tiellä. Tiellä on kaksi autoa, which again you add another a, put in the partitiivimuoto because you've used a number. Tiellä on autoa. It's the same idea with minulla on, and hopefully this shows again how minulla on is different to most sentences where you use a verb of having used something, or there's a process in place or an action. There's no action, you're just describing on me is something, on the road is something. So again, you could say tiellä on autot, which means all of the cars in a given context are on the road. Hard to give an example of exactly how that would be. I haven't really thought of one. Another example with the tie is tiellä ei ole autoa. Tiellä ei ole autoa, which means on the road there is no car. Okay, so hopefully these kind of comparisons with the tie and minulla can help you further to sort of understand how minulla is not a verb. Okay, so then that will hopefully help you understand how to think about the object and the form that the object should be in. So then a kind of final addition that I wanted to put onto my video that I made last week is that you can kind of be quite flexible with how you create your sentences. So I wrote an example down. So someone could maybe say to you, onko sinulla avaimet? Onko sinulla avaimet? Which would mean is with you or is on you keys, the keys, avaimet. You could answer, instead of saying minulla on ne or minulla on avaimet, you could say ne, which is they, ne ovat minulla, or avaimet ovat minulla. Instead of saying minulla on avaimet, you can put them in, you can kind of play with that sentence and move it however you like. It's the exact same meaning, whereas I guess in the English language you would say they are, I have, or something like that. If it was exactly the same translation with English, but in the Finnish language, because it's not a verb, you can play with that sentence however you want. So you could say, I don't know, onko sinulla kirja? You could say, se on mulla, se on minulla. Mulla is puhekieli, spoken language. But you could say, se on minulla. Or you could say, minulla on se. Minulla on kirja, kirja on minulla. So you can play with that sentence however you like, and the meaning will be the same. So that's kind of a further addition to how kind of minulla on is used and understanding minulla on. Hopefully that's everything covered. I thought that was the case when I made the last video, but it definitely wasn't. Hopefully that's everything covered, and hopefully that does help people understand the usage of minulla on. I know it's a super basic thing and basic idea. It's really easy to use, and I guess you don't have to overcomplicate it as I have. But I just wanted to kind of explain it further for people who, I was quite good at Finnish, but I didn't know exactly. I couldn't figure out how do I form my object? What form is my object going to be in with minulla on? Because to me, it's a process, but I would always get it wrong if I put it in the partitiivimuoto. But it's in the nominatiivimuoto in most cases. So thank you for watching. As I said, I hope it helps. I hope to make another video again later this week. And I hope to see you soon.